Welcome to the Excellence at Work podcast, where we explore the strategies and best practices that drive business success. I'm Rachel Cooke, COO of Brandon Hall Group and the host of our podcast, along with members of our executive team. In each episode, we'll dive into the latest trends, insights, and real-world examples from some of the most exciting leaders from organizations worldwide. Be part of our journey and learn from the best as we discuss innovative approaches and cutting-edge technologies for talent management, learning and development, leadership, diversity and inclusion, and more. Hi, I'm Rachel Cooke with Brandon Hall Group. I'm the host of our Excellence at Work podcast and the COO. And today we're going to be talking about leadership, the evolution of leadership, and how even in today's environment, how important it is to develop our leaders and some of the challenges that the workplace faces, our leaders face. And so I'm excited about this topic. We've been chatting a lot about leadership, about the workplace, about where we're headed in the future. And with me today, I have a leader from Chronus, Jodi Petersen. She's a VP of Customer Experience. And most recently, she was with us at our Excellence Conference just last week and talking a lot about this topic here and sharing their experience and their best practices and how they're working with their clients and some of the trends that they're seeing and best practices. So I'm looking forward to continuing in that discussion and sharing more with all of you about Jodi's experience. And Jodi, why don't you share a little bit more about your background and how you got started in the industry?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I'm super excited to be here. I'm just, like you said, coming off of that great conference that we had a couple of weeks ago. I lead the customer experience team at Chronus. We are an employee connection platform. We have mentoring, employee connection groups, technology to really support those. Plus, our experts really help you design the right programs for your organization and help those programs be successful. I got started in mentoring years ago through an employee resource group, the Women's Employee Resource Group at a company that I worked for, and just really developed a passion for it. And so dove in, learned all the things. About 3 years ago, I started Mentorstrat, a mentoring consultant firm where I was helping organizations create, scale, design, redesign sometimes their mentorship programs, really trying to align them with what their organizational goals or problems or challenges were. And then Chronus acquired Mentorstrat in July of last year, and I joined the team at that time. And we've really been just working on how can we expand the thinking about social learning and how it applies to how when paired with traditional and experiential learning, especially in this leadership realm, it can be more effective for organizations.
I agree. And it's congratulations with the acquisition and also your achievements. And that's exciting. We're seeing also a lot of, I think a lot of learning is integrating or offering some type of coaching, and we see the benefit. Also, I had a panel with some of our learning leaders and HR leader that won an award, and they shared some of their success contributed to applying their coaching experience or helping build their teams through coaching. What was successful is having tools that help them formalize it and help them be able to have, there's different approaches to coaching, which, I want to kind of get your perspective on, as you know, and we see a lot with companies when they're first starting, they may not have a structured formal process or a tool to help enable that. But once they do, it can help them scale at large and can help have a much greater impact. And so from your, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing right now in leadership or, that you think companies will face in 2025?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a unprecedented year, I guess. We started seeing a lot of shifts, obviously, with COVID, with at that time shifting the workforce to work at home. And I think it fundamentally shifted the leadership dynamics. Some organizations have adapted really well to it. Some are still emerging in adapting to that. And in the midst of that, we're seeing huge shifts again, right? So going into 2025, I think leaders really face thinking about companies that are coming back in office or having hybrid work environments. That's a different leadership dynamic there. Emerging technologies like AI, really trying to balance leveraging and strategically using those technologies for efficiencies and effectiveness in their organization, but also trying to maintain that human-centered leadership. So it's a tricky balance. I think I remember a couple of years ago, my daughter, she's a junior in high school now. And when ChatGPT first came out, the high school like blocked access within the building because they wanted to prevent kids from cheating and, what they considered cheating, which valid point. But I remember telling my husband at that time, like, I think this is the future of work and the school needs to evolve to teach students how to leverage it and use it responsibly so that they can, because that's they're going to be faced with in the workforce. And so it was interesting to kind of see how that's evolved in companies and especially in leadership over the last few years.
Mm-hmm. And I still see it a problem though in education. And, we have a daughter that's in sixth grade and a son that's a senior in high school and a college student as well. And it's starting to become more acceptable, but there's still some teachers that just won't allow it. And I feel though they, like you said, they really need to help the kids to be able to leverage these tools, just like we need to help our workforce, our employees to be able to leverage them, because it again, it's not doing your job. You still have to, it's a great way to get started. It's a great way to kind of plug in a prompt and to help you kind of think about whether it's your presentation or you're looking at building a new strategy, but it doesn't end there. It's not, and I think people still kind of, some, not all, but I still think there's some hesitation that they feel like they're cheating or they're not,
right.
They're not being authentic. But it's really, it's kind of like having the encyclopedia in your brain in some ways, but you can't just like put it all out there, right? You have to like make sense of it.
Right. Right. It is making sense of it, and it's trying to have it help you instead of replace you, I think is a good way to think about it. But look, I mean, I think it kind of leads into this whole, like, we have 4, and in some regards 5 generations in the workforce now, and it's the first time ever, right? It's unprecedented having so many generations in the workforce. And in doing that, you're going to have generations that are born in technology and they haven't known anything different. And you're going to have, generations like mine where all of this was new at some point, and we didn't grow up with that. And I think for leaders of today, really trying to figure out how to balance that multi-generational workforce, how to leverage technology to foster that collaboration, I think is going to be important. And so I think it's just a little bit of a different skill set. And then I think what that is all like leading up to is companies are faced and leaders are faced today with needing to think really strongly about executive or succession planning, role-based succession planning, because when the boomer generation is leaving the workforce, they're taking a ton of institutional knowledge with them. And how can we prepare those next leaders for those key roles coming up? And what part does technology play in that is a thing, kind of topic of conversation that we talk a lot about here at Chronus.
Yeah, it's really about the leaders building resilience, adaptability, right? Being able to understand the technology better. In the past, I think leaders would get to a certain point and they kind of, I guess they get to a certain point as the technology evolves and they're much more senior in their roles. They rely on other teams to be able to, leverage the technology or deploy the technology. But I think now everyone's kind of responsible for having a better understanding of, doesn't mean you have to code and doesn't mean you have to build the technology, but you truly have to kind of understand how it works and the impact that it has and what's the right type of technology or the right type of solution. And especially when we're faced with a lot of different options. Also, looking at leaders and looking at poor leadership, what would you say are some of the consequences that companies will face based on poor leadership in today's environment?
Yeah, I think what I have seen is that typically the poor leadership in organizations or unprepared leadership can lead to like a lack of alignment of goals across departments or a lack of alignment with those goals to the overall objectives of the organization. This can really cause teams to struggle with things like execution or innovation or moving forward to help the organization meet the objectives. When you think about like poor leadership, and how that erodes trust with employees, how it demotivates them, how it causes them not to be as productive as they could be. All of that turns into huge dollars for organizations. When you think about, if you ever heard the expression that people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. Gallup estimated that $1 trillion a year in the US alone is due to voluntary turnover, and much of that can be attributed to poor leadership. So it does result in real dollar impacts for organizations when your leaders are not prepared or not aligned with what your organizational goals, competencies, objectives are.
And what do you think that we could do to help shape leaders or help, whether it's from hire to from hiring to onboarding to retire? What can we do different? And we talked about coaching and mentorship. Where does that fit into this? The
Yeah, it's been interesting over the last couple of years to see how mentorship and coaching has evolved to be an integral part of the conversation. So when you think about traditional mentoring of old, it used to be, well, one, it used to be that it wasn't accessible to everyone. It was reserved for high level executives, and mostly in that kind of take someone under my wing and bring them up to be the next me and bring them up in my image. And so now we know that employees are more successful if we help them be the best versions of themselves. And that's where mentorship comes in. When you think about embedding mentoring and coaching with your other traditional leadership development type programs, like just core learning courses, workshops, that type of thing, blending that with experiential learning, which is going to be your hands-on special projects, job shadowing, that real practical application of the skills or competencies that you're trying to build, and then adding that mentorship component. I think that's where the magic really happens, because you're able to get real-time feedback that's personalized to you where you are on your own development journey. And so it's not one or the other. It's sort of like, we need the traditional learning, we need the experiential, and then adding mentorship into that program can really make it impactful for organizations. When you think about, I personally believe that leadership development starts at day one in an organization, that a healthy leadership pipeline in a company starts with your onboarding. How are you assimilating and fast tracking time to value in people's roles? How are you helping them in their early career build those foundational skills? How are you identifying your high potential talent and developing them and starting them on that leadership, development that's aligned with your leadership framework, and so on. And so the unique needs of an individual at various stages of the career journey, that's where personalized mentoring and coaching programs can really be effective, because you can meet both the collective organizational goal at that point or level, and you can also meet the individual in the moment that matters for them.
very true. And we saw in our research when we survey each year, we look at kind of the priorities for HR and learning and talent, and how business leaders and HCM leaders are prioritizing their resources, their time, their budgets for initiatives. And coaching and mentoring, they reported almost 70% of this being a area of priority for competencies for professionals for creating leadership development. So as you can see how critical it is for leaders to be able to develop and have the ability to have their leaders be able to have whether the ability and the skills to coach, but then also the tools to support it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really think about it as, we've worked with organizations where they had mentorship, but it was more of a feel good initiative. It was something that employees asked for. And so they responded in kind, giving them a mentorship program, but it really wasn't being activated as a strategic lever in their organization to meet some kind of organizational objective or goal. And so when that happens, those are the first programs that can be cut, you know, when budgets get tight or there's shifts in the world. And so what we're trying to do with our customers and our clients is really help them understand that a strategically designed program to meet a specific need for an employee group along that leadership journey isn't just a feel good initiative. It is something that should be embedded into the culture of the organization, and it delivers really compelling ROI for them when done correctly. And so that's why I love what we do at Cronus, because I'm able to both help organizations in that consultative role and really just help them design the right program for them. But also then we have the technology to help them do that at scale, right? And I heard when we were at the Excellence Conference, there were several people who were running mentorship programs in their organization, and scaling was the problem because they were doing it manually. So they were saying, like, I got it to be this point with this many pairs, and then I can't do it I can't grow it from there, and people want it and I don't know what to do. And that's where just a little bit of technology can help, right? You can remove the administrative lift from these programs so that you can scale, but also the person who's running the program can focus their attention on making sure that the programs continue to stay aligned with what the organizational objectives are, especially in a world is something new every day coming at us.
Right. Yeah. And we hear that a lot, as I mentioned, how important it is, but then, they start off with perhaps an ERG group, or they just start off as a, volunteering to, I want to help so-and-so. And then so-and-so feels like, oh, wow, this was really helpful. And then it becomes word of mouth. And then it becomes, somewhat a little bit of a structured, on paper based. They start seeing some of the benefits, but then the next level, you really have to kind of incorporate the technology to be able to scale and to be able to then track also, not just, word of mouth, the benefits, but to be able to have those measures in place and to be able to report and to show the benefit. And also, this also for engaging, right? Retention, development. There's so many different ways that this can be leveraged and for you to be able to track the ROI and show it. Also, going back to your mentoring tool and blending it with the learning experience, can you also expand upon that scenario and how that works together?
Yeah. So we're taking a employee sort of purpose-driven employee connection approach with our, not just our tool, but with the programs that we help you develop. So whether it is support for an ERG, whether it's mentorship programs within an ERG or other kind of employee connection group, or whether it's a leadership program, we're really helping you work with you to understand, is your program aligned to your business objectives or a problem that you're trying to solve or a need that you have? So for example, oftentimes, we'll help organizations take the design of their program from, we're having a retention problem, right? We want to boost retention in our organization. So we think mentorship can help. Absolutely, it can help. How you design that program and how you invite into that program or recruit into that program matters for your outcomes. So a lot of times organizations they'll just spend time with us designing a program, and then they'll send a mass email out to their organization, and whoever comes can come to the program. And, but what we really try to help them understand is that the most engaged people in your organization are the ones who are going to come to employee connectivity programs anyway. And if you want to have really impactful programs built, you need to find the people that are less engaged, critical to retain skills or employees that maybe wouldn't come with just an email announcement in their email box or a note in a town hall, that you need to strategically recruit them, because the people who would join voluntarily, for the most part, are the people who aren't going to leave anyway. So in order to get these impacts, you have to be really strategic about how you're inviting. And that's why like to help companies think about smaller strategic programs to do really specific things in their organization. When I was running enterprise-wide mentoring for the company that I used to work for, we had 60 some programs running, and they were really smaller niche programs meant to do a certain thing in their organization, and had really good success with doing it that way, because then you can be specific about who you're bringing in. Like, for instance, identifying your high potential employees in your talent review process, and then bringing them in to start aligning them with your leadership competencies. That development looks really different than a director level trying to move into an executive role, right? They need different skills, different competencies developed. And so, we can help do that. The technology that we have supports those programs. It can match people in mass. It can help guide them through that experience. Sometimes mentorship programs and coaching programs, when they're not structured with guidance after the match, they can become like coffee chats, or sometimes they even get like abandoned. Ghosting in those types of situations isn't uncommon. And so we really help create that structure along the journey. So for us, it's like a balance of the subject matter expertise that we bring and the technology, which really is creating those impactful programs.
That's great. I like how you pointed out, I feel that's good advice about kind of creating these smaller niche programs to attract or to target those that may not necessarily be the ones that are outreaching or taking these opportunities. And I think that's such a larger population, because if you look at research and you look at high potentials, they always tend to be maybe that 10% of the workplace, give or take, you look at it. So it's such a large population that are maybe kind of somewhat B students or B players. And yet, you can make such a big difference in this population. You don't want to ignore the high potentials.
Right.
You want to make sure that you still can engage, but I think you're going to be able to connect with them at a much higher level and more, they're going to be more accessible, and they're going to be more part of the process and kind of, being part of the journey, where you really kind of have to take more of a targeted approach for this larger population. 100%. And if you can, retain a larger number of this population, and also motivate them and get them to achieve more. So you'll have a greater return on your investment.
Yeah, 100%. If you think about on a scale of like 1 to 10, your 9s and 10s, they're going to stay. And it's this percentage of the population. Your 1s and 2s, they're going to leave anyway. It's your 3 through 8. That's the bulk of your employees. Right. And if they're a little bit disengaged or a little bit unmotivated, that is where the opportunity is for some of these, bring them in, help them develop personalized development plans, figure out where they want to go with their career. And that's where you can make those big impacts in terms of retention, engagement, productivity. That all really translates into real dollars, some cost avoidance, but some, if you think about the expense to replace an employee, it's like 2/3 of their annual salary or something like that. So you're not only having to spend that money to replace them, but you're also having to pay the new person a salary. And then there's that onboarding time and that time that it takes them to be productive in your organization. It's just a lot of dollars out the door. And so really, we help you think about the different populations that you have and what their needs are, and how we can develop something that's going to work for them and specific to your organization. I could design a really awesome program in, the Brandon Hall organization, and then pick it up and try to move it to some other similar type company, and it might not work. Every organization has their own culture, heartbeat, unique needs and goals and objectives. And the trick is like trying to align them and get them just right, so that both the company and the individuals within it can succeed and find success. And then you're building that leadership pipeline in the future, and it's always just remaining healthy.
Right. And oftentimes people leave too soon without truly knowing their value or knowing their potential or knowing what they could achieve. And when you see individuals jump, every few years from one place to another, you often wonder, well, it could be a combination of reasons. However, by doing that, you're not going to achieve enough in a year or two, or you're not going to make a difference, or you're not going to, you know, retrieve the benefits of an organization. And sometimes you need to self-select, or companies need to make decisions. And yes, however, the more that you can have a better structure in place for developing and engaging and retaining, you're going to see a larger retention rate and performance.
Yeah,
What
for
other,
sure.
is there anything else that you want to point out as far as ROI?
Yeah, I just think that so it used to be one person you'd come out of college, you'd get a job and you'd stay at that job forever. And the company was loyal to you. You were loyal to the company. It's now like one person, many careers kind of mentality. People are shifting away from their, what job they had when they first came out of college or whatever their major was. Like for me, my undergrad degree is in speech language pathology. So I've taken a lot of turns since then, and had many different careers. And I think that when someone wants to do something different or pivot their career, they don't feel like they can do that within their current organization because you have this persona of who you are in that company. And so they'll jump ship to another company to sort of reinvent themselves. If within an organization, you can help through mentorship and through coaching, you can help people pivot their careers, identify their transferable skills, be able to do things like skills forward resume writing and interview in talking about those transferable skills. You can really benefit from having the individual be able to pivot their career within your organization. And that is going to help because they're going to be happier. They're going to be more well-rounded, and continue to bring that value because you helped them get into a spot where they wanted to be in their career. And so mentorship is really effective in that area because it's a personalized thing, right? It's an individual thing where you're trying to go and what you're trying to achieve. And so I've seen it be really successful, and that's, delivering back that value to the organization as well.
We've seen that too in our research about, job rotation for talent mobility and retention and engagement. And also it gives those the ability to have different perspectives and different greater understanding of the business from different
Absolutely.
angles and different experiences that they can bring more diversity of thought, more diversity of experience, whether it's geography or function or, it's not even advancing in your role. It could be shifting from laterally. However, over time, if you do want to move into higher positions, it'll give those a greater opportunity because you have such a deeper understanding of the business.
Absolutely. Yeah. The organization and like your just overall business acumen is improved by having these different experiences and that. And I agree with you. A lot of times you need to, and that's something that when I pivoted my career, I worked with my mentor on, was that sometimes you need to go parallel before you can move up, right? And so if you want to pivot, let's talk about what those sacrifices are that you're making to get to where you want to ultimately get to. And so those are things that those are learnings and conversations that you wouldn't necessarily get from if you took a class on how to pivot your career, right? Those are personalized conversations that you can have with a coach or mentor.
And if the organization doesn't have that available to you, or you don't take the initiative and you do go someplace else, you're kind of starting all over again, unless you know the team, or unless you already have a friend there or a colleague there. Then you're just kind of starting and building your platform again, or you kind of, you're having to, build your connections in a new organization. There's, nuances. I'm not saying that it doesn't always work, but if you do have the resources and the opportunities in your existing organization and you can keep building that momentum there, you have a greater chance of kind of advancing to the place you want to be sooner than later.
Yes, 100%.
and vice versa for the organization to be able to show greater impact on the business and on their talent. You
Yeah, I worked with a company, they're a healthcare company, just a real quick kind of story to pull it all together. They needed a role called nursing informatics, which is basically like the data analysis of nursing. And so they asked nurses in the organization whether they wanted to go get this nursing informatics degree. So a handful of them raised their hand, they went and they got this degree, they came back, they started applying for these jobs in the company, and they weren't getting them. So then they were leaving. They were like, okay, well, I have this new skill, this new degree. I'm going to go and reinvent myself somewhere else. And so we worked with them to create a really intentional mentorship program that would help. What we found when we kind of dove into why they weren't getting hired is they didn't have experience in data analysis. They had this degree, but they were interviewing as nurses, right? And so they weren't talking about these new skills. They weren't interviewing as data analysts and talking about their experiences in that way. And so these people who are hiring these data folks just weren't making the connection. So we created this mentorship program. We paired them with data analysts and data scientists in the organization so they could start to learn how to talk about their skills in the way where they could get jobs. And it was wildly successful. They were able to retain the remaining people that they had invested in, and kind of stop that like leak they had in their pipeline. So really something very nuanced in their need. They were going in the right direction, and it was only that social learning aspect that really pulled it back and made it successful for them.
That's a really good example. That's fascinating. It's interesting. They're telling them to go get these degrees and but you can see, the degree is not always the end all either. You really have to tie it all together with what they are looking for and how to describe your skills better, how to sell yourself. So it doesn't come naturally for a lot of people. And you could be the smartest person, you can have all the texts and skills, but you also have to have the next layer, whether it's the emotional intelligence or being able to communicate, and coaching can be very powerful in helping you communicate and connect with your, whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it helps you uncover your motivation. It helps you uncover your best self and gives you that guidance that you need to get you to where you want to go. Sometimes I do panel discussions like you did with mentors and mentees, and it's really amazing to watch. You design a program that's meant to do something really specific in the organization, but the outcomes that people are getting from it, they talk about, yes, the success of how I got from point A to point B, and that was my goal, but also they talk about those things that the overwhelming thing that people say that being in a mentoring relationship gives is confidence. And I hear it all the time, and people get emotional on those panels. They tear up. They talk about how their mentor is a household name, how they're using those skills that they've learned in their mentoring relationship with their families and their children. And so it's more than just this kind of work related thing. It can be a life-changing experience for people when it's done well, and you see the power of someone giving to someone else in this really unique way, leveraging their own experience. I tell mentors all the time, like, talk about your failures as much or more than you talk about your successes, because that's how someone is really going to learn from you. Is like, hey, I was faced with that situation, and here's what I did. And it was wildly unsuccessful, but I failed fast, learned by doing. And that's the momentum, especially in the leadership development area that we want to get.
We've had, and Jodi, you would love being part of this, when we've had our Women in Leadership Summits and our DEI immersive events. A lot of it and you were just sharing how you felt the conference was the right size, where you were able to make the connections, you were able to meet a lot of people, but it wasn't so overwhelming like a 3,000 person industry conference.
Right.
So our Women in Leadership Summits and our DEI experiences, they're more probably 60, 70 people, and it's a day and a half. And it's all stemming from starting with your your challenges and those stories, and a lot of them are like humorous in some ways now, if you look back.
Now,
Not then. But everyone was so empowered and it was so emotional too. And a lot of these programs also, when you're advancing women or in the workplace or focused on inclusion, kind of started with either an ERG group or some type of coaching and mentoring program. And then even though it was centered maybe for a very specific group, once the news got out and others, whether it was first for women and then men saw, well, they want to be part of it. They want it. So, it's interesting how it may start somewhere, but then once the word spreads and if it's done in a way that's really empowering and, really empowering, then, others want to be a part of it. And that's the goal, right? To be inclusive.
absolutely.
You sometimes have to start in more of a smaller group that are maybe perhaps marginalized or start at a different place, but then it can open up. And that's the goal, is really to kind of share and inspire.
It does. And we talk about, we have really intentional conversations about how we match and pair people together. Like skills matching is one thing, right? You need a skill, you have a skill. But then there are nuances to the goals and objectives to say, for example, for women, there are different outcomes when they're paired with a female mentor than when they're paired with a male mentor. Males can create that path to sponsorship. They can open doors where you might not have access, right? And so that's a different approach than I, as a woman, need to learn from the experiences of, a woman who's a step or two above me in their career and can help, guide me and help me overcome some of those challenges that I might face. And so those types of conversations, when we're working with our clients and we're really talking about building these programs for them, it can get very nuanced to figure out like what are the primary objectives, and just that slight difference in how you're matching people together and your approach can make a difference in your outcomes. And those are things when you think about, I'm going to start a mentorship or coaching program, that you really don't think about all of those different things. You think about, okay, I need to pair people together and I'm going to do it by skills or by levels or by department, but there can be some really powerful outcomes when you think about it in terms of underrepresented populations and how you can help them through mentoring.
Well, Jodi, I could stay here chatting with you for hours more. All good things must sometimes come to at least a wrap for today, but not an end. Do you have any lasting advice maybe for companies or teams that have not started, where they should start?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things. So two of the top reasons that mentoring programs fail are the lack of alignment with your objectives of your organization, but also buy-in from your executives. So if you don't have that sponsorship or that executive buy-in, then those programs won't be seen as critical to the organization, and they're often cut when those tough decisions have to be made. So really spend a lot of time before you're even thinking about the design of your program on those two things. And then I think when you think about it in terms of leadership development, start small and scale, whether you're starting with like high potential employees trying to create a path to sponsorship, or whether you're starting with, directors and VPs trying to move into those C-level roles. But one word of caution for when you go into the design of your program, oftentimes people will come at it with a MVP or pilot mentality, which sounds awesome, but then a lot of times they cut corners in the design of the program and it doesn't end up being something that's scalable. So I think about it more in terms of like start small, then scale. Soft launch a well-designed program is better than rapidly implementing a program that isn't well thought out and then isn't scalable or isn't bringing the ROI that you kind of signed up for with your executive sponsor. So those are kind of a few things. And then obviously, we're here with the subject matter experts, but also the technology. So leverage that to really think about things at scale.
Great advice. Yeah, especially, sometimes when you're looking at these big, large initiatives, it can be overwhelming. So, starting off small or starting off very specific, and then building from there will help you at least, kind of gain some experience and test it and figure out, next steps. And then also partnering with organizations like Cronus that can be a great partner. But thank you, Jodi, today. It was great chatting with you. I love this topic. It's such a fascinating topic. And it's, again, fun connecting with you and your team. I don't know what you did in your session last week, but you sound like you were having too much fun. I was in another session at the time. And I don't know if you were having a performance in there, but
like it was the end of the day and people were passionate about the topic. So we both had fun and also learned a lot. They asked really great questions, which I'm always excited to see the questions that people are asking and kind of figure out where they are their journey. So we were able to both celebrate and learn. So it was a really good time. Thank you for having us.
well, thank you. Thanks for being there. Thanks for your support. And we look forward to having you again next year, and let's continue the fun throughout.
Will do. Awesome. Looking
Have a
forward
good
to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.